Why does Donald Trump listen to war criminals, and who will be destroyed by the White House tariff hurricane? This and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us, as usual, Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel RashkinReport and local elected official in Wisconsin. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I think it's an amazing reality we get to live in where, I guess I'm just glad that I am not heavily involved in stock market activity. I can just, relax and we can discuss it, just you and I and a few of our listeners.
Unpredictable reality, magic things we see around us. I was very angry today and disturbed about a visiting of Putin's special representative Kirill Dmitriev. He was in the United States, sanctions were lifted, he was allowed on Fox News, big channel, where he spouted a bunch of Russian narratives and accused Ukraine really of violating the ceasefire. Why was he allowed in, and what could be agreed on between Kirill Dmitriev and Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy? How will his visit affect the reproachment between the United States and Russia?
And that's part of the reason that I feel there's a smile on my face when we're discussing these very grim things, is because it's almost seems laughable or ridiculous that we would be having these conversations about having an envoy from Putin, essentially, at the White House and working on how to get Russia free of sanctions. And that is very clear because we see that Mr. Dmitriev's expertise has to do with managing finances, and that's what the problem for Russia is right now, is finances and sanctions. That on one hand, Russia and Russians can say that they don't mean anything, but on the other hand, it's a terrible burden for the country. And part of the reason that supposedly perhaps Donald Trump did not levy tariffs against Russia. I mean, there's hardly any business, although I guess $2-3 billion of goods and services were still discovered that could be levied some tariffs against, unlike those penguins in unoccupied islands, uninhabited islands that got tariffs. Russia did not. And something happened, maybe if those penguins joined the FSB, they would have been more successful. Penguins. But until then, I think that Dmitriev's visit is highlighting to what extent the United States is now really viewed, I think, as part of Russia by Kremlin. Because they're coming in here to dictate their terms. They're telling us what to do. I think that as an American, I find this kind of shameful, kind of embarrassing that we would have such close relationship with Russia. But at the same time, it is a reality that must be acknowledged. I think that there's a lot of potential business deals that Mr. Dmitriev can be promoting, why Russia is there to practically replace Europe, because Europe seems to be such a bad ally for the United States. But Russia is ready. Russia has resources to provide in Siberia, all over the place. And of course, Trump towers can be built anywhere and everywhere. And these possibilities, I think, is potentially what may be leading President to be so unhappy with President Zelensky, is that, again, Ukraine just keeps getting in the way of United States and Russia, having, really their leaders, having great business relations. And I think that's what it's all about. So when we hear any pronouncements from Mr. Dmitriev about Ukraine, it just seems kind of out of place. What does he know about the situation? He knows much more about America. He knows much. He was educated in the West. He graduated from Stanford. How does it's a separate conversation of the privileged life that he's lived that allowed him to take advantage of America, the things that America has to offer to such utmost extent, because it's kind of ironic because Mr. Dmitriev and I were We showed up in this country practically at the same time. I came with my family as refugees from Soviet Union, and he came as an exchange student because his father was a high, upper Communist Party figure, and he graduated from Stanford and had access to the best of the best. And now his wife, I mean, I wouldn't envy that. That seems a little much, but his wife is best friends with Putin's daughter. So he's very clearly, very closely connected to Putin and knows much more about money than he does about war in Ukraine and anything to do with it. So that's why I would expect those decisions to be the ones that they would be discussing. Of course, it could be an interesting twist if, let's say, Russia had its sanctions removed and then it had a tariff put on it to make it seem kind of like a kind of a circumcised piece that would make somebody supposedly feel better, because we often see this from the 47th president, where he does something that may seem unconscionable, but then he says, but look, we're making money on this, and that makes it okay. And you go, no, wait, that makes it worse. But no, so I think the same way that he is perfectly okay and comfortable selling American citizenship for $5 million, why not sell America to Russia for 500 trillion zillion dollars, which Russia is very glad to pay.
But Yuri, there is a huge difference between you and Kirill Dmitriev, a whole abyss in worldview and principles. And we see it exactly, how different people can be in such way. Dmitriev also said, talking to Fox News, that Russia is considering some security guarantees for Ukraine, but of course no NATO, no accession Ukraine to NATO. What could he have meant? How do you think? And does this message indicate some change in Russian position, or it just eye rolling?
I think that security guarantees, there's a couple of things that I would take a look there. First of all, I would consider the fact that Russia cannot be trusted, and therefore any guarantees from Russia would be invalid by definition. At the same time, guarantees from President Trump seems like something that oxymoron. Because what we are seeing right now in the financial markets is a lack of guarantee that president will make sensible decisions, and that situation is going to be somehow improved. There's no faith in that whatsoever. Once trust is lost, it's hard to gain that back, and security guarantees have to be based on trust. It is remarkable that Ukraine would in the first place expect security guarantees from the United States after what happened with Budapest Memorandum, where Ukraine surrendered nuclear weapons in exchange for somehow thinking that the United States will therefore protect it against Russia, while that wasn't necessarily what was in the agreement itself. And now we can speak like Representative Don Bacon, who I still salute for his bravery for even speaking out on the issue in the first place, but he still says that we have a moral obligation to help Ukraine. Ukrainians, I don't think, feel that the obligation is moral. I think that they feel that it's pretty legal bound and binding. Whether that is reality, well, then we're back to the question of the United States and security guarantees. At the same time, Putin never seems to have given up on his desire to consume Ukraine as a whole. And so any sort of security guarantees would be meaningless, because he doesn't just violate every agreement, but he has a goal which has been very clearly stated. He wants to own Ukraine. So I think that all of these conversations lead us just to understanding that the longer these negotiations take place, the better it might be for Ukraine, because A, that means that help from that was approved by President Biden, former President Biden, continues as the process continues to evolve, because taking away aid would be punishment for not following through. But at the same time, considering that whatever Trump administration keeps, we see leaks of what isn't maybe in these capitulation agreement. I'm sorry, the peace agreement, as the Trump administration may see it, that it may be unacceptable to Ukraine to sign such a document, which would lead us to the next stage of this production, where 47th president can declare Ukraine to be responsible for its inability to agree to peace, even though peace really means just capitulation. And if Ukraine can work around that, that would be a pretty impressive fit of Ukrainian diplomacy. But at the same time, it was able to accomplish that feat by getting the United States to restore military aid and not the security, but the information intelligence aid that provides crucial information for Ukrainian troops. So it is possible. It is possible to negotiate with Trump. It is possible to extend time. It is also possible to understand that right now, with what's going on in the United States, 47th president may feel himself in a weakened position, because he doesn't have quite the leverage of a strong country, strong economy, strong whatever, although in his mind, as long as he's associated with it, then there's strong, and if he's not part of it, then it's weak. But again, Trump realism versus reality could be two different things, and then they clash into each other. And even if 47th president doesn't realize that his leverage has decreased, I think those that are negotiating with America, with the United States, with this administration, understand that American leverage is decreasing. I think every hour, every minute that stock market is open, because it has only one direction to go right now, and that's down.
We will soon know whether Russia is serious about peace. If yes, that would be great. We will move towards peace. If not, we will have to reassess our situation and what we will do with it. We are looking to see if Russia is ready for peace. Not their words, but their actions will show whether they are serious about this. For the first time since March 18, the day that Russia declares as a day of ceasefire, which it itself violates, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that yes, Putin is violating. But how will the USA change its decisions when it sees that Russia exactly continues to violate everything? Will Trump really use the levers of pressure?
While it is reassuring to hear Secretary Rubio say some of the right words that should be said more often and more regularly, we need to also understand that sometimes words are just that, just words, because ultimate decision maker in this situation is President Trump. And certainly Secretary of State has shown that he has very little influence over the decisions that are being made by this White House. And I'm sure that Secretary Rubio is probably considering himself to be quite lucky at the moment that he is not on the hot seat that supposedly the other adult in the room, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, is sitting on because of the Signal Gate scandal that is breaking out right now, where we actually are starting to see some Inspector General to take a look at the Secretary Hegseth actions in this, because it is a total fail of so much protocol and so many procedures. It shows so much disrespect for everything that is supposed to provide our security and be guarantees of our national security. How can we talk about guaranteeing anybody else's national security when we seem to be failing to guarantee our own? The National Security Advisor Waltz, who is now in the hot seat because he included a journalist in a chat that shouldn't have been taking place, yes. But supposedly these types of chats are happening all the time, in a sense that there was at least 20 different chats that were admitted by various people as having been a part of. It means that there's one person that's more or less likely to be the next one out the door. And the only thing that it prevented, the main thing that upset Donald Trump is that this that Mr. Waltz had journalist's phone number in his phone, and the only thing that is preventing firing of this national security advisor at this point that's been clearly caught in disloyalty. I mean, next thing he'll have, anyway. The other thing that's preventing right now for the firing, I feel, is that would makes the administration seem weak. Will make the administration seem like they are bending to the will of the people. I mean, that's what weak democratic states do. And this really reminds me of Putin, because whenever there was a protest against some other corrupt individual, especially if Navalny, remember Navalny, he would put out those popular videos, like there was one about Medvedev and how corrupt he was and how pitiful he was, and everybody laughed at Medvedev. But did Putin fire Medvedev then? No, because Putin doesn't play those games. Because if he's going to have somebody who's being attacked, you can't fire that person. Essentially, you can have, and there's been examples even worse when the most corrupt individuals, I'm thinking of the Attorney General of Russia, that was incredibly, of course, corrupt, but practically by definition, and one of the very popular movies of Navalny was about him. Eventually, he retired long after all the scandal has settled, but he would not be fired when the scandal broke out. So I feel like that's part of what we're seeing with Mr. Waltz right now. And Secretary Rubio, well, he says the right words, and he knows that he's going to swallow those right words, and he knows that he's got a very difficult and painful job, because never mind that he has to grovel before Russians, but he now has to explain and point a finger and wag the finger at Europeans, at Western Europeans, who have historically always been America's allies. And now he has to show them the finger as he is being as friendly as he can be with the Russians. I wonder how his Cuban heritage feels about all of this really sad development for I feel like the entire Rubio family. But what do I know? I mean, he's a Secretary of State. That's all that matters, right?
Yes, and we see that he's really normal among different representatives of Trump's administration, really, and maybe it's difficult to him, but what could he do, really? But Donald Trump mentioned about Europe too. Yesterday on his Air Force One plane, he told that Europe failed to cope with Putin, but I can. Donald Trump is confident, as always we see. The American president said that he is striving for a speedy end to the war because again and again, thousands of people are dying every week. According to Trump, there are all the prerequisites for this, the readiness of both Putin and Zelensky to make a deal. What deal is he talking about if Putin is violating everything and every time and everywhere? And when might the next phone, how do you see, call between Trump and Putin take place? Because information about it on this matter varies.
I think that it's important to always remember that a guiding star for the 47th President of the United States is good relations with Vladimir Putin. And that really helps to identify, if we take that as a constant, then I think everything else starts to line up quite well and consistently. For instance, it's very important for Vladimir Putin that to have all the world leaders gathered around him on Red Square on May 9th. It may not resonate so much as an issue of importance with us here in the United States, because May 9th, I mean, okay, because it's not the end of World War II. It's not the end of war in Europe. It's just a date that Soviet Union picked. It's their own holiday that Russia inherited from Soviet Union. So it doesn't mean very much for us here. But for Vladimir Putin, this is an extremely important gesture to see a Chinese leader there and Donald Trump there. And it seems like it's so important, as if they're going to divide the fate of the world there at that meeting. And it's as so important as if a 47th President of the United States cannot miss being there and miss the opportunity of being at this division of the cake that is the world that is going to be divided there. And apparently, it seems like you could do it over Zoom, right? No, you need to be there in person. And it almost feels like Vladimir Putin is the one who says promise to Donald Trump that, Donald, if you want to make it to the May 9th to Red Square, you need to get this Ukraine thing wrapped up, because that's how it is. Because I can't be friends with you until this Ukraine thing is finished. And you have to finish, because, Donald, you say you own Ukraine. You say that this is yours. Well, then get them to sign the capitulation, peace, whatever you want to call it. And I think that this is a big challenge, because as I think about it, as I watch this, it starts to puzzle me. Why is Donald Trump so concerned about carnage when he's ordinarily not that concerned about carnage? I mean, there's plenty of other carnage he's okay with, but this carnage is too much. That's good to know, I guess, but I'm a little suspicious. And it almost seems like for his base, it really all that they would just ask is if we would stop spending money on Ukraine, because that's really the problem, right? We're isolationists now in the United States, so we just don't want to spend money there. That's it. But it seems like that's not enough. It seems like Donald Trump is very much interested in ending the war as quickly as possible, even temporarily. And it makes me feel like those are the terms that were set to him from Moscow, and this is what he's trying to fulfill. Now, this brings us to a fundamental question. Is Donald Trump really just a bad at being a president? Or is he doing this because he's got a different agenda where he's trying to help another state? And I think that the situation is such that admitting that our president may be actively working to help a leader of another country is just embarrassing. It's shameful. It's hard to understand. It's hard to internalize. But reality remains what we're seeing, and it's just one piece that makes all the rest of the puzzle make sense. It's almost like a difference between a flat Earth and a round planet. We didn't shift to thinking that Earth was round because we had a vote and decided that we like the shape better. We decided that we're going to that when people thought that Earth was flat, astronomy didn't really work. Nothing lined up right. But when we figured out that Earth revolves around sun, then all of a sudden everything started making sense. By the same logic, if we just understand and accept that Donald Trump revolves around Vladimir Putin, then I think a lot of things will make sense, and then it makes it a little difficult to appreciate the words of different politicians that seem a little confusing at times. But if we understand that Donald Trump wants to have good relations with Vladimir Putin, then everything else just starts to make sense. And that the date of 9th of May, I think, is very interesting. I think the date of 20th of April that is being tossed around is very interesting, not because it's 420 Blazed, but because it's, frankly, it's Hitler's birthday. So there's just a variety of things about this that don't smell real good, don't pass the smell test. But it is ultimately a responsibility of Vladimir Zelensky to decide what he feels he and his diplomats and his foreign advisory team can do to help his country. Frankly, I am a little envious because, for better or for worse, clearly don't always agree with Vladimir Zelensky, but I'm envious of a country whose president is actively working for it again instead of against it.
Sometimes it seems to me that pink ponies live in Trump's head, or maybe dark black ponies, or maybe only desire to be a dictator like Putin, Kim Jong-un, and the same.
There is a desire to create his own reality, where he feels that surely because, these things are true, then the following is also true. And he creates these kind of false axioms in his mind all the time. But as we're seeing right now with a stock market that is capitulating faster than Ukraine by far, that sometimes his actions do not lead to consequences that he can even control. I think that this is reality versus realism of Donald Trump. They want things to happen a certain way. They try to push certain visions at people. And at the same time, with the understanding that Donald Trump himself can change his point of view at any time. And he is not bound by any assumptions, logic, anything. He can just change his point of view, but it is the job of his followers to, as they said in Russia, to waver along with the party line. And it's a big challenge, and I think Donald Trump presents a very interesting challenge for Republican Party, for everybody, as we observe this with that Soviet experience in the background. But it's very worrying because United States has not been through the Soviet experience, and that means that on one hand we have an incredible reserve of people who have not been pushed out of the country, who have not been destroyed over hundreds of years of so-called negative selection, but at the same time we're also not inoculated against the threats that this kind of politicking brings with it.
Tariffs, hurricane, what do Americans think about Trump's tariff hurricane? And do they understand, and Donald Trump administration for first, that it will hit them first and it can hit United States? Why did Trump do all this? And you mentioned about the fact that Donald Trump didn't impose tariffs on Russia. Why?
I think those are very legitimate questions that everybody's asking right now, and there's going to be nationwide protests all over the United States on Saturday in the small town where I live, and also in big cities. And we're on some level, we're kind of beyond everybody getting on the bus and going to Washington D.C., although there will be people who will do that too. But there's going to be protests in towns big and small because the dissatisfaction with the administration of Donald Trump and Elon Musk is growing every day, because there's new people that are joining this protest movement. Because first you have people who are joining it because of the principle, because what was being proposed was wrong. But very quickly, I feel the protests grew as more and more people were affected. And we went from people in the LGBTQ community to immigrants, to federal employees. The list keeps on growing, and then will keep on growing. And this means that these protests are going to be just more and more massive. And when you add to it the $2.5 trillion of wealth that was wiped out due to president's actions, directly due to president's actions, it's all of America, every American that had a pension fund that was invested lost money on this, and our economy will continue to lose. With so far, the bottom has fallen out. We have not reached the bottom yet. We have just stepped over the edge and are now going to go down, down, down to see at what point we're going to go up. The simplest thing to do would be to cancel everything that just happened, but we know that's not likely to happen, simply because that might seem like a defeat to some people, which in a way it would be, because this was a terrible, terrible idea. But more than likely, we're going to be going further down this path. And I'm not even sure if this is a problem that can be ultimately be solved without having a different administration in place. This, Irina, what happened on April 3rd is very reminiscent to me, the more I think about it, on what happened when Russia had the big invasion of Ukraine on 24th of February of 2022. Because certain things you can't take back. You can't unwind a war, and you also then lose all trust in a person that you need to be making a deal with about peace, because nobody trusts Putin and nobody trusts Donald Trump. And I think that there's some interesting parallels there that we will, I guess, continue to discuss how this situation will evolve.
We see big challenges, big problems, and your big professional answers. Thank you for it and for this conversation, Yuri. Glad to see you. See you next week.
Thank you.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, and local elected official in Wisconsin was with me. My name is Irina Uzlova, and with us, guys. Thank you for viewing. Take care.